Let me tell you a story about my friend John. I wonder whether you've ever known someone like him. In many ways, John is a lucky guy. He has a wonderful wife, 2 smart young kids, and an interesting job in the marketing division of a company we'll call Tip Top Products. In the eyes of many people, John's on top of the world. But as our story begins, John is feeling very upset. He has just left his office at Tip Top Products at closing time and is on his way home as usual. But he decides to stop for a few minutes at a nearby park to try to regain his composure. John is troubled because of a conversation he had just a few minutes earlier with a colleague named Fran. "Say, John," Fran remarked, poking her head into his office, "have you heard the latest rumor about next year's budget? It's all over the company." "Haven't heard a thing," John replied. "What's the scoop?" "Well, it's just a rumor, of course, but the word is that the board is worried about this quarter's profit downturn. They're supposedly talking about downsizing, and from what I hear, your division might be on the chopping block." John felt a knot beginning to form in his stomach. "Really? Who told you that?" Fran shook her head. "I'm not supposed to say," she replied. "And it may turn out to be nothing, but I thought you'd want to know." "Thanks, Fran," John answered. Suddenly, his plans for the evening, enjoying dinner with the family, followed by a football game on TV, seemed utterly inconsequential. Fears and worries flooded his mind as he left the office. Now, sitting on a park bench a few minutes later, John thinks about the possibilities of being laid off and the dire consequences that could happen. What if he can't find another job? Will his kids be able to go to college? Will he lose his home? A neighbor got laid off a year earlier and had to move back in with his parents. It could happen that easily. Can his ego handle being fired? How will he break the news to his wife? Susie is such a worrier. And maybe she'll figure he must have done something wrong to deserve being let go. She'll probably wish he'd married her old boyfriend Ben, after all. Isn't he a hotshot lawyer by now? And who could blame her? She deserves better than to be hitched to a failure like me. John finds his mood rapidly plunging from anxious to worried to downright depressed. Then his thoughts turn back to Tip Top Products. He recalls all the years of hard work he's put in and the contributions he's made to the company's success. How had the bosses gotten the company into this position? And how did they decide that downsizing would be the solution? Was the decision made just to benefit the people at the top? I bet those fat cats in the executive suite aren't facing any pay cuts, let alone layoffs. John fumes. His feeling of depression gives way to a sense of resentment and self-righteous anger. Suddenly he remembers Fran's words. It may turn out to be nothing. That's true, isn't it? Rumors like this have circulated before and turned out to be just hot air. And Fran is always one of the first to spread the latest scuttlebutt, true or not. John's anxiety begins to lift. Heaving a sigh of relief, he says to himself, "It's probably not true at all. After all, 1/4 of bad financial results is no big deal. I bet our profits are going to be back to normal in no time, and the board probably thinks so too." He gets up from the park bench and heads towards home. Strolling through the park, John finds his thoughts going in a different direction. He says to himself, "Maybe this rumor is really a wake-up call for me. I've been trying to work up the courage to leave Tip Top for the last year and look for something better. Like a job at that high-tech startup my buddy Ron just joined. Maybe now's the time to do it." He begins imagining the exciting changes that a new career path could bring. The higher salary, a bigger office, maybe a company car, and a country club membership. Picturing the admiring expression on Susie's face when he brings home a handsome bonus check from his new employers, he becomes quite excited, even inspired. He vows to get to work on updating his resume as soon as possible, maybe tonight. John's buoyant mood is mellowed by the sight of two kids, about the same age as his own, climbing on a jungle gym. After all, he thinks, isn't that what really matters? Having a family you love? There's a spring in John's step as he exits the park and heads for home, looking forward to some quality time with his wife and kids. As for the rumor about Tip Top, that can wait till morning, when he'll compare notes with his closest colleagues and figure out what's really going on. You may have never had to deal with a downsizing rumor like the one that sent John into a tizzy that afternoon, but I'll bet you've experienced emotional ups and downs like he went through. It's a common, almost universal experience, especially in a world as full of unpredictable, uncontrollable changes and chances as ours. As you can tell from the story, John's emotional ups and downs simply followed his thinking. It's our thinking that takes us on this kind of wild ride in life. I call this riding the mood elevator.